The God that hates the dark. It began as all truly terrible things do, with a gift. Alara Vance inherited the house on Morning Crag from an uncle she barely remembered. It was a grim, gabled thing of black stone and leaded windows, perched on a cliff that seemed to suck the light from the sky. The town and the valley below spoke of it in low tones, if at all. They called it the atrium, though no one could say why. The deed came with a single typewritten note from her uncle. It must be occupied. The doors must be closed at night. Do not listen to the house when it breathes. Alara, a pragmatic woman fueled by debt and desperation, saw only solvency. She moved in on a day choked with fog. The key turned in the massive front door with a sound like a breaking bone. Inside, the air was not still, but holding its breath. The architecture was wrong. Angles subtly acute. Corridors seeming to lengthen when she walked them. Ceilings too high and lost in shadow. And in the very center of the house, a vast, skylit room from which all other rooms radiated. The atrium. It was beautiful. Sunlight, weak and gray, filtered through the grimy glass dome above, illuminating a miniature forest of exotic, waxy-leaf plants growing from rich, black soil. A stone path wound through it. At the center stood a single magnificent tree with bark like polished onyx and leaves of deep Venus purple. The air here was humid, sweet with the scent of decaying blossoms and rich earth. It was the only room in the house that didn't feel hostile. It felt hungry. The first night, Alara heard the breathing, a deep, tidal rhythm that seemed to emanate from the walls themselves, in and out. It was synchronized with a faint, phantom light that pulsed from the atrium's dome, a light that came from no moon or star. She checked the door. Locked. The note echoed in her mind. She retreated to a bedroom, burying her head under pillows, the rhythmic breath a lullaby of dread. Days passed. The house began to adjust to her. She'd find a favorite book on a table she'd never used. A cup of tea, still steaming, would appear when she was chilled. The atrium's plants bloomed with flowers that turned to follow her. The tree's leaves shivered in delight when she walked the path. The house was courting her. The breathing at night became softer, comforting. She started calling the tree the Sentinel. She felt protected. Then the invitations. They appeared on heavy vellum, elegantly scripted, propped on her breakfast table. Not invitations to go out, but to stay in. You are invited to a soiree of shadows in the East Hall, tonight at the hour of the twisted candle. A nocturne of whispers is scheduled for the West Gallery at the Deepening. Alara, rational to a fault, assumed she was sleepwalking, writing them herself. Yet on the night of the soiree of shadows, curiosity overpowered fear. At the appointed hour, the East Hall was lit by a dozen black candles. Shadows did not cling to the walls, they danced upon them, figures in a silent, ghastly ball. She watched, mesmerized, as two shadow lovers embraced and merged into a single, monstrous form that pulsed before dissolving. The house was showing her its history, its other guests. The gifts grew more intimate. She found a hairbrush made of silver and what looked like petrified bone. It untangled her knots with a sigh of pleasure. A dress, sewn from fabric as dark and soft as a moonless midnight, appeared in her wardrobe. When she wore it, the house's breathing hitched. The sentinel's branches would lower, caressing her shoulders as she walked the path. The turning point was the mirror in the upper landing. It was covered with a black velvet drape. A new invitation. The unveiling of the true tenant, midnight. At midnight, the drape was on the floor. The mirror showed her reflection, but not as she was. She was radiant, powerful, crowned with living vines from the sentinel, her eyes depthless pools of calm darkness. Behind her reflection stood figures, tall, elegant, with elongated limbs and faces of serene porcelain beauty. They were the previous occupants. They smiled. They looked proud. The reflection mouthed words, "Welcome home." Alara stopped thinking of leaving. The town's warnings were the babble of insects. The house loved her. It needed her. The sentinel, she now understood, was not a tree. It was a root, a tap root. And the house was not a structure, but a chrysalis. The final invitation was not on vellum. It was carved into the flesh of her forearm one morning as she woke, in thin, painless lines that welled not with blood, but with a sap-like substance that smelled of the atrium. The communion, the atrium, at the closing of the eye. That night the house was alive. The breathing was a deafening roar. The walls glistened with a dark, viscous moisture. The atrium pulsed with a light that was the negative of light, a profound anti-radiance that made her eyes water. The sentinel was glowing, its trunk transparent, revealing a complex crystalline system within, pumping not sap, but a fluid black as oblivion. The figures from the mirror were there, solid and real. They were not human. Their beauty was a weapon, a hyper-real lie that hurt to look at. They gestured her to the base of the sentinel. The ground opened, a perfect circle of darkness in the soil. The house is a valve, one of them spoke, its voice the sound of roots cracking stone. The sentinel is the needle. This world is a skin, bloated with the infection of light and noise and life. We are the antiseptic. You will be the hand that guides the needle. They were not offering her immortality. They were offering her apotheosis as a cosmic toxin. The house didn't hate her. It hated everything. It was a beachhead for an entity that considered existence itself a grotesque, screaming anomaly. A god that hated the dark because the dark was merely the absence of light, and it hated light more. It sought the true knoll, the uncreation. Ilara tried to run. The floor was flesh. The doorways were teeth. The house, her lover, was now her consuming womb. The elegant figures seized her, their touch freezing the very concept of warmth inside her. They lowered her into the hole. The black soil was not soil. It was billions of sleeping, minuscule mouths. The sentinel's root plunged into her chest. There was no pain. There was unmaking. She felt her memories, her love for sunlight, her fear, her selfhood, being siphoned out, replaced with a glorious, raging hatred for all that was. She saw the plan. Through her, as a conduit, Sentinel would extend its root through the ley lines of the world, injecting its nullifying essence into the planet's heart. Life would not die screaming. It would simply be unremembered, wiped from the cosmic record as a mistake. But in that moment of ultimate violation, a tiny human spark remained. Not love, not hope. Those were already gone. It was spite. Pure, vicious, irrational spite. If she could not be Alara, she would not be their perfect vessel either. With the last shred of her will, she did not fight the hatred. She directed it. Not at the world, but at the house itself. At the sentinel. At the beautiful porcelain figures. She hated the atrium's fake beauty. She hated the comfort of the dress. She hated the god that thought it could use her. The house shuddered. The valve stuttered. The god's attention, vast and distant, focused on this tiny rebellion. Not with anger, but with the disgust of a surgeon finding a cancer in his own tool. The backlash was not an attack. It was an adjustment. Ilara was not ejected. She was incorporated. The soil mouths finished their work. The sentinel's root fused with her spine. Her body reconfigured, elongated, her skin hardening to polished onyx, her hair becoming strands of living vine. She stood, but not as a woman. She was a new feature of the house, a permanent fixture. Her consciousness was smeared across every stone, every window, every breath of the awful, rhythmic lung. She was the custodian of the valve. She could feel the hateful God on the other side, its infinite patience. It would wait, another would come, the invitations would go out, and she, Ilara Vessel Node Custodian, would be the one to write them, to groom the next tenant, to guide them to the atrium. She spends eternity now, trapped in the beautiful, horrible room. She tends to the sentinel. She writes the invitations in perfect, elegant script. She breathes with the house. And when a new owner, desperate or curious or arrogant, finally accepts the final invitation and is lowered into the mouth of the earth, it is Ilara's vine-haired, onyx-skinned form they see last, bending over them with a smile of exquisite, shared torment. She is the hostess of the end of the world, and her story is just the first page of the last book, written in a language of hate, on paper made of human skin, in a house that is always, always breathing.